Hello folks, my name is Micah and today I'm going to be diving in depth on my thoughts, theories, and takeaways from Under the Silver Lake. I recently watched this film for the first time as part of a film club that I started with a group of friends, and I was immediately enamored by it. There's a lot to dissect in the film, and there will be spoilers ahead, so if you've not seen it, for the love of everything, please go watch it first. It's totally worth your time, but I will be giving a lot away about the film, plot, and specific events. Not all of the ideas in this video are my own, but I will be expanding on some theories that are already out there. I did join the subreddit for the film, which I have contributed to, but I haven't posted all of my ideas yet because I really wanted to make this video first. So without further ado, we'll first jump into some simple references from the movie about other films, conspiracies, pop culture references, etc., and then move on to more daunting parts of the film. So within the first couple minutes of the film, we get references to other movies. To begin, in the scene where Sam sees the squirrel fall out of the tree, we focus in on Sam and we get what's called a dolly zoom, which is a reference to Hitchcock movies like Vertigo, and most notably for me, Jaws. This intrudes on our normal visual perception and highlights a sense that something is wrong, or a sense of impending doom, which undoubtedly the director was going for with Sam's expression and the change in music. Moving on. This next shot is an obvious reference to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, when Danny is riding his tricycle through the Overlook Hotel, and he comes across what are supposed to be the ghost twins in the hallway. The difference here in this shot, however, is that we're not seeing this from what would be presumably behind Danny, but what Danny would be seeing as he's rounding the corner. The entire shot leading up to the twins, we see Danny in frame, but what's interesting here is that we see Sam wearing a light blue shirt reminiscent of the twins' light blue dresses, which doesn't paint Sam in a good light. As we'll find out as the movie goes on, he's not exactly our protagonist or hero. Another thing that I thought was interesting was the director would make a reference to The Shining in such a way, and I was half expecting Sam's apartment number to be 237 or 217. However, it's number 23, which appears to be a reference to the film The Number 23. If you've never seen it, it's a movie with Jim Carrey where the main character becomes obsessed with this book he finds, and he in turn becomes engulfed in this mystery he's created involving the number 23, in which numbers that are significant to him, like his birthday and other dates, add up to 23, and he's convinced that all these coincidences are in fact deliberate and part of some greater significance. And in turn, as we continue watching Under the Silver Lake, Sam is similarly afflicted in the sense that he's looking for meaning in all of the media that he consumes, convinced that there's something greater going on around him, that he's going to uncover something incredible along his journey throughout the film. And this is something that consumes Sam. It's something that he's obsessed with. And I think this is reflective of conspiracy culture altogether, but more importantly for the sake of the story, for him in particular. And it's not something that's a new idea to him. He's been doing it for a long time. There are messages and codes and things that he's been looking into for, since he was a little boy, and that's something that he mentions at one point in the movie that I'll go ahead and show right here.
I just remember being in my room when I was like 10 and coming up with all these weird little codes and secret languages.
This next one is actually a reference to another film that David Robert Mitchell directed called It Follows. Disaster Piece also scored that film, and this notation on the bass clef is actually the main theme from that film's score. A not so subtle nod from the filmmaker, but if you're going down the rabbit hole of believing that everything in this film is in fact a code, this is just a misdirection, a red herring in that regard. There's not much to look into, and people who are better at reading music than I am had gotten this figured out, and I believe one of the people on the Reddit subreddit actually contacted Disaster Piece to ask him about it. The next several references are to the Zodiac Killer or the Zodiac film by David Fincher, based on the book by Robert Graysmith. The first reference is when Sam meets Sarah and she invites him to hang out. On her dresser there are 3 dolls, each with names and symbols underneath them. The first time I watched this, I thought the symbols looked familiar, as I'm a huge fan of Zodiac, the film, and an avid reader of books about serial killers. The next reference is when Sam goes to meet the author of the zine Under the Silver Lake, and there's a newspaper clipping of the original police sketch of the Zodiac Killer on his wall. Additionally, here we see a photo of Elizabeth Short, or the victim known as the Black Dahlia. Some people contest that the Zodiac Killer may have been responsible for her death. However, this is not confirmed. I believe this could be a reference to that theory created by former detective Steve Hodel. Another reference to the Zodiac is the book that Sam reads to help him crack the code in the song Turning Teeth by Jesus and the Brides of Dracula, actually written by Disaster Piece in conjunction with Silver Sun Pickups. This book, The Code Breakers by David Kahn, is the same book that Robert Graysmith's character, Jake Gyllenhaal, uses to crack the Zodiac's forgotten cipher in David Fincher's film. I suppose my final thoughts about Zodiac's connection to Under the Silver Lake would be in regard to likenesses in the main characters themselves. Furthermore, in terms of the human condition of being consumed or obsessive about seeking the truth and our insatiable hunger for mystery. Robert Graysmith became so involved in the Zodiac case that he ruined his marriage, left his job, and ultimately had his children helping him put together the pieces of his puzzle. Likewise, Sam becomes so engulfed in the mystery that he's unraveling that he neglects to pay his rent, loses his car, doesn't shower for days, and the money that he does have, he spends on alcohol and a sexual encounter with an aspiring actress. A number of those items were already in the works before the audience is introduced to the story, but the gist is that there is nothing more important to Sam after Sarah goes missing than getting to the bottom of this mystery. The next topic I want to cover has to do with Sam's encounter with the author of the zine Under the Silver Lake. Firstly, and most obviously, there is the presence of a seemingly endless number of owl statues around the house. This is alluding to the idea that the author is an endless pit of knowledge and wisdom. However, he is unable to make sense of how all of this information that he has compiled relates to the real world or the mystery that he's trying to solve.
Something really big is going on. I know it.
And you think any of this could be connected to Sarah?
Of course. I mean, it could be a lot of things. Sex and drug trafficking, the cult of the whale, the dog killer, I don't know.
To me, this echoes the mantra of Edward Snowden. Although completely unrelated to this story, essentially when we see or consume everything, we understand nothing. This brings me to my next observation. Aside from the presence of owls, there is the address of the author that is very prominent when Sam first arrives at his home. 1492 has an obvious association with Christopher Columbus, and my connection to the author and Sam has to do with what Columbus didn't accomplish rather than what he did. Although I'm not a fan in any way, he was a piece of shit. Christopher Columbus received patronage from Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain in 1492 to find new routes to India and the Far East for the sake of trade. He failed to do so and in turn found America. He didn't find America. And even when he got there, called the Native Americans Indians. They were not Indian. To me, this could be a nod to the fact that the author is on a voyage and doesn't know what he's looking for, and doesn't know how to make sense of all this information. As Sam takes up that mantle, especially after the death of the author, he also doesn't know what he's looking for on his own voyage, but ultimately ends up at a destination or revelation that he didn't expect and likely wasn't what he wanted to find. Although he achieves his goal of finding out what happened to Sarah, he doesn't get the satisfaction of a great revelation in regards to the songwriter, or get a definitive answer to who is telling him to leave codes in his songs. If this seems like a stretch, consider that aside from the address of the author, another item in his home that there are several of are wooden ship replicas, 4 total of what I observed. I would have been more apt to have kept this number at 3 if I were the filmmaker denoting the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, but I'm not a filmmaker and my opinion is inconsequential. But even if all of that isn't enough to convince you, consider this as well. On the author's wall, there is another clue that might provide some vindication here. Do you see it yet? Yes, that's a $1 bill from the Bahamas with Christopher Columbus's face on the note. His name is covered, presumably not to make this so obvious, but here is the original bill. For now, I'll leave this video at that. There is so much more I plan to cover, and even from this video alone, this isn't the last we'll see of the author's house. In the next video, I'll cover topics involving Sam's visions or dreams, his internalization of imagery and experiences, references to other conspiracies, as well as theories that I have about some of the events and characters in the film. Please feel free to comment your thoughts below, and if you want to like and subscribe, I'm not going to stop you. I don't necessarily have plans to monetize these videos. A lot of this is really just something that I felt compelled to share and get out into the open, and hopefully it will resonate with people. This film has so many layers, independent of the codes woven into its fabric, as the director would describe. And honestly, that seems relatively difficult to come by in films these days. So when we do, I think we should cherish it and show appreciation by drawing conclusions and sharing our thoughts with one another. Until next time, take care and keep your eyes open.